Thank you, Simon, Roger, and Tina, for the invitation and for letting us present Anduril, which is the software for which implements Cooke's method. Okay, so let me go to my slides. This is the overview of my talk today. I will first say something about the name of our software, and then I will divide the talk in 3 acts. The first one is launch, second act is no fee, and the third act is friendliness with an epilogue before we start the discussion. Okay, so well, in the email for the invitation to this talk, the name was already discussed, but I can't start a talk about Anduril without mentioning anyway the name, right? So Anduril is the sword of Aragon, the son of Arathorn, which was reforged from the shards of Narsil. And Excalibur, well, this was the sword of King Arthur, and well, we didn't really have any code for Excalibur. So what had to happen is that Excalibur was broken to pieces and then reforged. And of course, the only consequence possible was that the name of this new tool should be Anduril. And I would like to take credit for the name of the tool, but I can't because that was 100% George's idea. Which brings me to the first act of this talk, which is launch. So Anduril was born during a lunch discussion with George. George was interested on trying out some ideas on Cooke's method. And then he thought, well, don't we have some code? And then, well, I said, no, we don't. And then he said, well, why don't we write our own code? And I said, look, be my guest, right? Try it. And then he took these words seriously. And well, he thought initially that this would take about a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, but it took more than 1 year to get to the first release, actually. And the first release was based in MATLAB. This is George right here. And we published the first release of Anduril in SoftwareX. And the name is also explained in this first paper. Anduril with an I, by the way. That's something that we should clarify. This Anduril is with an I. Okay, so what happened with Anduril? Well, it has no graphical user interface, but you know, because it's MATLAB based, it already improved a little bit on the graphics. So these are the kind of graphics that one can get from Anduril in the MATLAB version. And well, for comparison, this is the kind of graphics that most of us are familiar with from Excalibur. One disadvantage of Anduril is that this was restricted to the 5th, the median, and the 95th percentiles. But it did implement a global weight decision maker with optimization, item weight decision making with optimization, equal weights, and user defined weights. So here you can see that the output of Excalibur for one of the seed variables, I think, or one variable, I don't remember if it's a seed variable, but it's one of the variables. This is the output that we would get from these 5 decision makers, 1, 3. I think the second one is global weights without optimization. And the rest are here. I'm not sure. Oh no, second one is item weights. I see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are the decision makers, and you see the agreement between Excalibur and Anduril is yeah, it's just for the precision that we cannot really see in Excalibur, but for the rest the agreement is yeah, it's perfect. And we tested this first tool in one of our studies for gross domestic product in Mexico. This study for gross domestic product in Mexico was later used to quantify uncertainty on CO2 and in general greenhouse gas emissions for Mexico. This was done in collaboration with Daniel Puch and other colleagues from Denmark and France. Okay, so this another difference that Anduril implements with respect to Excalibur is that Excalibur interpolates the density of the decision maker on the quantiles that are chosen. So, for example, here in red, you see the interpolation that Excalibur does on the 3 quantiles, just linearly interpolating, whereas Anduril uses really all quantiles which enter in the which are entered by the experts. So, for example, here in equal weights, you see more disagreement on quantiles which are not the 5th, the median, or the 95th between Excalibur in red and Anduril in blue. In item weights and in global weights, you see less of a difference, because I think for this case there are only 2 experts entering the with non-zero weight. So the more experts entering a particular mix, it's more possible that there will be differences between just interpolating in between the 5th, the median, and the 95th, or taking all possible quantiles in these experts that were given by experts. Another nice thing about Anduril that was not implemented in Excalibur is that we can do robustness with selecting more than 1 item or expert at the time. So this is a plot with the robustness analysis of the calibration score for the same study with 1 item, excluding 1 item at the time. So this output is the same as Excalibur, but then Excalibur cannot do this, right? Selecting 2 at the time, 3 at the time, 4 at the time, and in this case we go all the way up to 5 at the time. And the same for the information score. And this is also available for robustness on experts, right? Excluding 1, 2, or you know, as many as the user would like to see on the robustness analysis. Okay, so as far as we know, there were at least 4 studies where Anduril, this version of Anduril, was already used. The first one was by Paulina Kinderman, one former student of us in civil engineering, together with Tina and other colleagues for extreme water levels. Then George participated in 2 expert judgment studies, one of which was led by him, and it was a big chunk of his PhD research. And another one with Maria Nogal, who is now also assistant professor in our faculty at the TU Delft, but back then she was at Trinity College, and she visited us in Delft as part of her postdoc research with a grant from the expert judgment project that we all participated in some time ago. By Team's initiative, Team Anka and others, of course. Okay, so second act, no fee. Of course, the obvious disadvantage of Anduril was that MATLAB is still very expensive, right? So we immediately wanted to put or to ship Anduril into something that would be completely free. And in civil engineering, most people work with Python, and it's growing a lot, the Python-based users. And Marcel at heart, right here, he's a very good programmer in Python. So when he joined us to work on his PhD, one of the first tasks that he took upon was to translate Anduril into Python. And he did that successfully. And so you see here, let's see, the first version of Anduril was published in July 2018. The version in Python is 1 year later, July 2019. So it took 1 year to go from MATLAB to Python. What happened? Well, this makes Anduril. Oh yes, and here's where the name changes, right? From I to Y, because, well, yeah, Python users always use Y somewhere in their name, so we used Anduril with Y. And maybe this is a bit confusing nowadays because we don't know when to use I or Y. We didn't foresee this beforehand, but yeah, we have to live with this confusion now. Okay. Here we already implemented user-defined quantiles, so we were not restricted anymore to the 5th, median, and 95th. And here we're also implemented dealing with missing items. This is something that Excalibur deals with. So some experts, sometimes for some reason, they don't provide answers for a particular item, but nevertheless, Excalibur goes ahead and does the calculations with whatever quantiles were assessed by the experts. So the second nice thing about this study published together with Marcel is that we were able to validate Anduril with more studies. And I think we took the same ones that Tom Masuki took together with X-Staff for that first out of sample study. Okay, but what we found is Anduril in MATLAB, we were able to test in 18 studies because if you remember, Anduril only implemented 3 quantiles, so that's why we couldn't test all 33 studies that we were able to test with the Python version. But in both versions, we encountered an agreement of at least 96%, but some of the differences were just precision. So here you see, for example, the differences is in the second digit, and it's 2.30 versus 2.31. And here the same is only precision. Here again is basically only precision. Here is a little bit larger difference. And in some studies, we really, the differences were really large. And in at least one study, we think that the data is wrong. The data that is currently available in Excalibur is wrong. But we went and checked the data, and there's something there wrong or funny with the naming of the items and the answers that you can get from the data. But once you account for the precision, the MATLAB version of Anduril already had 100% agreement in these 18 studies, and the Python version had a 99% agreement on 33 studies for global item or whatever decision maker was used in that particular study. Yeah, okay. Third act, who is here also. Hi, Hus. He came in and tried to make then Anduril more friendly for users, right? So Hus worked on a nice graphical user interface. And again, it took roughly 1 year to go from the release of Marcel, July, well, less than a year this time, to go to the release of Hus with our first graphical user interface for Anduril. But that was not the only nice thing, because Hus also improved in speed, because we were computing this density for the decision maker in a very inefficient way. Though I still have to say that that is a good way if we were to use densities which are not uniform in the interquantile range. So that's still, that's still something positive about the earlier versions of Anduril. And then the improved accuracy by Hus, right? So just to give you a feeling, our first version of Anduril in MATLAB took 15 minutes to perform robustness analysis, leaving out 4 items in one study, 15 minutes. The first version of Anduril in Python took 60 seconds. but who's managed to bring the MATLAB version to 30 seconds. This is, of course, a huge step. And this is also a not negligible gain in speed, right? From 60 seconds to 4 seconds. So it's we were very happy with these gains in speed. And he further improved on accuracy. And here I'm showing some studies where, so the green ones are the ones that where we achieved full agreement with Excalibur, right? And then again, there are some where we actually don't know what the difference, where the difference come from. But at least in a couple of these, we think it's just that the data is not completely well in the versions that we have for hemophilia and ice sheets. Okay. I have Anduril up and running. So if we have some time, maybe I can show. But I prepared some slides just to make this a bit more efficient. So this is more or less how Anduril looks like compared to Excalibur. So this is the Pooch study for gross domestic product. Here are the experts, calibration score, information, and the weights as usual, and the decision maker, right? Well, here you see something that, first of all, in Anduril, you have 4 panels, right? Here, you see the calibration, the information, these 3 columns are the same as these here in Excalibur, the weights, but here you see that these normalized weights are not really the same as here. So, but that's a small disagreement. This panel is not shown in Excalibur, but here you see, for example, one expert and the assessments of these experts. And then if you click in that corner, you see a color map. And the color map, when it's showing colors in red, it means that the assessments of the experts are underestimated or below the realization. And when they are more bluish, then that means that they are above the realization. So these colors start already giving you an idea of how an expert could hint at what the scores for, or at least calibration score could look for a particular expert. Here you see another panel where with information. Here you see now the weights that are here in Excalibur, and again the calibration information and the information on all variables. And then when you plot items, then you see I will go to that in the next slide. But here you also see the items that are entered in the study. So I guess one advantage of Anduril is that you have the information more available already in the first panel of the program. Like I said, when you click on plot items, then you will go to a panel that looks like this one. And then here we are plotting by items, but you could also plot by experts. You can select 4 types of plot type. The range graphs, which are usual in Excalibur. For comparison, here is the output of Excalibur. But you can also see the actual densities. Right, you could also see the cumulative distributions for this particular item, and you could also see 1 minus the cumulative distribution function, which is something that we very much use in probabilistic design in civil engineering. So that's also part of the interest of having this plot there. By the way, this is the version that is currently available in Software X. So if you go ahead and download the Software X version of Anduril, then you will see these color maps on that particular version. Well, you can still export the results. So for example, here you can export experts, items, assessments, or results for global optimization, item optimization. And here you can export scores, robustness per item, robustness per experts, or the decision maker's cumulative distribution function. And then you will get a text file. And then the text file you can open in Excel. This is similar to what is done in Excalibur. And the output looks like this. Here you see the particular percentile, the cumulative value for these assessments, or well, these values for the variable of the decision maker. Okay, and again, I'm here referring to Puch. Okay, but Who's has kindly continuing a little bit, or well, not a little bit, a lot, the development of Anduril, and he has a new version. It's not yet officially released, but I suppose that if some of you are interested, Who's could send the version. But what you see here is already a different color map, because especially for the cumulative distributions or the densities, this color map was a bit more difficult to read because some colors were very similar. For example, here F and G is difficult to distinguish between them. But here it becomes a bit more clear, the output of Anduril, so you can distinguish more clearly the experts. Also, you see this extra button or canopy in Anduril, where you can add decision makers. In the first release of Anduril, you could only have one decision maker on the plot, but here you can have as many decision makers as you have here. So here you see this is the global weight decision maker, but you can also have the item weight, and you can append here different decision makers. And these become available for plotting in the new version of Anduril. So here you see already 3 decision makers. And here, well, here you see the cumulative version of these range graphs. And for example, here in the equal weights, the decision maker, you can really see how having more percentiles in the distribution of the decision maker makes the distribution smoother than the solution that you get from Excalibur, for example. And again, that effect is less less visible in the global weights or in the item weights, because less experts enter a particular mix, or less experts are weighted with 0. Yes, so here again the color map, and yeah, I forgot what I wanted to see here. Ah, yes, now I remember. So one advantage of having the code available is that one can play around with the method a little bit more. So, for example, Who's is currently well, a recent study of Who's is on the review right now, and we hope that it will be published soon. But Who's actually elicited different percentiles for different items in his pool of experts. So these 3 items elicited the 5th, the median, and the 95th. But then these remaining items elicited also the 1st percentile and the 25th percentile. And the reason is that Who's was trying to get very low numbers of these variables. And then, you know, one thing that he tried is to also elicit this number to try to facilitate the experts' task when coming to those low values, right? And then because he has the code available, well, I'm showing it right now in the user-defined interface, but this is not really yet implemented. But I just took a screenshot from the developers mode of the who of the graphical user interface that who's kindly helped me install for this talk today. So yeah, this is to show one of the advantages of having the code available. And well, of course, a disadvantage is that you need a good programmer like who's, right? So the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, I suppose. Okay, epilogue. Anduril was born in a launch discussion, and since then it grew into becoming a completely open source code or tool that we are very proud of, which also has a graphical user interface available. And by the way, we have to thank Willy, which has been the main supporter and tester of Anduril since birth, I have to say, because Willy was also struggling with our first MATLAB attempts. Since the birth of Anduril, we've had 2 unsuccessful proposals to try to get more resources to keep developing Anduril. So the development of Anduril has been slower than we would hope for. So if you have some nice ideas for getting some money, or better off, if you have some money, please let us know, because we have some good programmers that could use it to keep developing Anduril. Whose priority is now the PhD research, and that's also why the development of Anduril is being slowed down. But our first priority is to merge it with our other open access, open source software, which is Banshee. And Banshee also has a very heroic name, because that's what we try to do. And that name, again, I would like to take credits for, but I can't, because that name is Dominic's credit, who is also there, our geographer. All right. So, but once we have Anduril merged with Banshee, we are hoping. By the way, the Python version of Anduril is currently on the review on SoftwareX. So we expect that the Python version will be available soon. It took now more, I see, almost 2 years, but it's also the review of SoftwareX is taking longer. I don't know why. But anyway, we do want to merge Anduril and Banshee in order to be able to use expert judgments to work with Bayesian networks. So that's the talk I have for today. Thank you for your attention, and happy to hear comments and questions.